Welcome to Citizens Report. I'm your host, Patti Ceppa. I'm also the Vice President of the Radnor Citizens Police Organization. Today we have on set wonderful topic. Here we welcome today Sergeant Lunger. Welcome, Sergeant.
Thank you.
And Officer Cocco. But not only are they joining us, a little bit later we're going to have the canine dogs right here on stage. Okay, so welcome. Why don't we start off with I have a statement from your Chief of Police, Chris Flanagan. I asked him specifically, how do you become a canine officer? And I'm going to read this so I don't get his words incorrect. He states that when it comes time for the police administrators to select an officer to be a canine handler, it is an extensive screening process, especially for the candidates. These applicants have to have very specific criteria. They also have to have proven track record as an officer. They are chosen and they must possess the following attributes: spirit, attitude, an extensive understanding of the law. A very important one is to be the ability to be calm in specific situations. Also dependable. How often did the officer call out sick? So this record, the process is very scrutinizing. They even go out and interview their neighbors and their family members. So these are two very special guests. They're just not anybody, and they've accomplished a lot to be in this position. So let's start off. If you want to start, we'll go with Sergeant Lunger first. Basically, just explain how the K9 unit was started. I understand it was started with $0.
Patty, that is correct. We were able to get our K9 unit started and up and running for several years using only money that was donated from the citizens of this township. I think that speaks a lot about the type of people that live in our community, and the support that we had for our K9 unit was phenomenal. The reason we started the unit, things around the country have been changing. Obviously, we've had mass incidents which involved explosives and things like that. So we needed, without getting into too much detail, we needed obviously to look to expand our services to provide, protective sweeps for various township events that we had. So that's when we first started discussing the opportunity or the feasibility of a K9 unit.
That's terrific. Now, did both of you start at the same time?
That's correct. Me and Jen. Now, John Braxton from Braxton's Animal Works, where we get our food, brought us some pictures of police dogs that Radnor had. They were bloodhounds. I believe they were Sarge and Bella.
Oh. Yes.
From the 50s.
Definitely Sarge.
We thought that we were the first two canine handlers in the history of the township.
Okay.
John has since brought us some evidence that his dad actually trained some bloodhounds for the Radnor police in the 50s. But as far as we know, we were the first ever. But it goes back for years, I think, the canines of Radnor. But there was a break for a while, and me and Jen were the first that we know of to be the handlers of the department. So it's been a great experience.
Wow, that's terrific. Amazing. So that's interesting because, you just mentioned bloodhounds. I know today we're going to meet Bear and Rocky, who are two beautiful German Shepherds. Is it always a German Shepherd in this day and age?
No, they are actually starting to use any kind of dog that any kind of dog has like a good nose. So they're just choosing any type of dog that is willing and has the drive to work. Some departments are actually using pit bulls, rescue pit bulls, but the majority are the German Shepherds and the Belgian Malinois that are in police work. Because of their intelligence and their high drive, and their ability to sustain everything in police work that we have to encounter. But yeah, there are other types of dogs, other breeds that are being used, but the majority are the German Shepherds or the Belgian Malinois.
Okay, and we can talk a little bit about where they're from, their origin, and items like that when we have them here on set. Maybe that would be a great way to bring them on board. But the one thing I wanted to ask you is about male compared to female. Is there a specific choice?
Most police dogs you'll find are male, but the question is very appropriate now because we do have a female police dog who's in training. Officer Ryan Collins, one of our new handlers, her canine Ursi is from the Czech Republic, and she's female. So it does go a male and female, mostly male, I would say, in my experience anyway, but certainly if there's a good female candidate for a police dog, they would not be ruled out because they're female. They're very capable dogs as well.
Oh, interesting. That's very interesting. I didn't know that. So why do we have them here in Radnor Township? What is the drive for it? Are they chasing down criminals? Are they looking for drugs? Are they looking for bombs? Looking for evidence? Give us a little bit of idea of how that works on a daily basis.
So both Bear and Rocky are what's called a dual-purpose dog, which means they are trained in the patrol aspect of police work, which is tracking, building searches, searching for evidence, criminal apprehension, and things along those lines. And they are also have an area of scent detection. We have 2 explosives dogs trained to detect explosive scents, which we provide that services for sweeping large-scale events at Villanova University, the various township events. The music festival has become extremely popular. Thousands of people come to our town for that day, so there's a lot going on. So we offer that service as well. So they can do a multitude of things. It's not just the criminal stuff. And when you think about tracking, it's not just tracking a guy who may have robbed a bank or burglarized a house. It's also a missing elderly subject, a missing child. So it's not just on the criminal side of it too. There's the other side of it. So we use them for a multitude of things, and they get a lot of work.
So, for instance, at a big event, would they be present there, or are they only in the pre-analysis state when nobody's there?
They're usually in the pre, where they do a preventative, sweep.
Okay.
To make sure. And then there are times that we are on hand in the event that there is a package or something that is deemed suspicious, and then we would possibly go check that out.
But in terms of crowd control or anything like that, not at all. We don't use them for that. They're strictly in the pre-planning stages. They're not out there, walking around crowds barking at people. That's not what we have our dogs for.
Yeah, that's amazing because they could probably scare some people. But
sure, and that's not what we use them for.
Speaking of can you give us an example of something that happened? I know you told me that piece of evidence, maybe. Whatever you can share with us, an example of how they retrieved evidence or something.
That's an excellent question, Patty. Of course, some tracks end up where you find an actual person and you take them into custody, and that's great too. But it's also, even if you don't find someone, even if it's a crime that's been committed several hours ago and that person is long gone, the dog can still track their scent to the area they went, and maybe they dropped something. I told you, before we started filming here, Bear he found a cell phone that an individual had dropped from a burglary, and he was long gone. But because he did find the phone in woods underneath some leaves that I don't think we ever would have found this phone.
No.
We were able to get some fingerprints and obviously from the phone track this subject down and eventually make an arrest based on the evidence that Bear located, even though the subject had gone. So even if the burglary is hours old, we could still do a track to determine if maybe they dropped some stolen items. We've also had that. We found some stolen items from a burglary before we were able to return to the owner. So you just don't know what they might come across, even though it's not a person. You might not end up with an arrest, but you could return somebody's property or you could find some valuable evidence.
Right.
And also on that aspect where it's not the criminal at the end of, a track, there have been cases where Rocky a few times have tracked an autistic child that had fled from their parents. While we didn't go near the child, it led, K9 Rocky led other officers to go into the area where the child was actually found. So that is another, tool, we have on our belts for something like that, including the evidence and, non-tracking criminals.
That's amazing. That's an amazing story. I love that. What is the chances of success if you are, say, doing a bomb sweep? I guess people want to know, how well are they trained?
Well, I think we've all found out that nothing is 100%. I don't care what kind of tool you're using. It could be any area of blood. Nothing is 100%. So as far as like a specific number, I couldn't really say, but it's very low.
Okay.
Very low. They are, for 8 hours a month for patrol, the aspect of work, and 8 hours a month for scent, those are training days for us. So we spend 8 hours a day doing patrol training, 8 hours a month doing scent training. So the dog stays proficient in those areas. So, and that's actually finding what they call ordnance, which is, the materials itself. So they actually do successfully find this stuff, for a training day once a month. If they're not proficient, then they can't pass and they would have to stay until they are. So you have to stay on top of their training. It's very important.
So they're constantly being, say,
Constantly,
tested.
yes, constantly being every month
Okay.
they're evaluated by the
Wow.
by the trainers, and if they do not meet those requirements, then they don't pass their in-service, and you have to keep coming until you get them. We've never had that circumstance, but it just goes to show you we stay on top of their training. In terms of searching the area, too, they're extremely more efficient than a human being, time-wise. You know, a dog could probably search a room or a field at least 10 times faster than obviously a human could, and they can smell things that you might not see.
Yeah.
You know, obviously. So as far as a percentage, I couldn't say that nothing is 100%. You know, there are many factors that get involved, but it's very extremely low. I would trust my dog with my life, if that means, if I could say that to someone who can understand it. I can't guarantee it, but I would trust Bear with my life.
Okay, absolutely,
Yep.
I'm sure. That's wonderful. So if you were to send him and you're looking for evidence or he's roaming around, what does he do to tell you he found something? Does he sit? Does he bark? Does he turn to you? What kind of reaction does he
So their indications
provide?
are sit. When they find evidence, they will sit. When obviously, if you find an explosive device, they're trained to sit because you can't disturb that. It could cause it to
Yeah.
cause it to trigger. So that is their indication for most everything that they find is a sit.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
There
interesting.
are dogs that are trained. The sitting is like called a passive indication.
Okay.
But there are dogs which they're going away that do an aggressive. Most of the time, they're narcotics where they will scratch at.
Okay, I've seen that. Yes.
But yeah, like
Interesting.
Sergeant Longer said, like we're more passive because you can't really go and scratch it.
Yeah, that's
you know,
great. Yeah.
Without it blowing up on you.
So how people, another misconception is that they're vicious.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you see these videos and nobody understands that they are just loving dogs. Can anybody walk up on the street and just pet them?
I would recommend that you would follow the same protocol you would for anybody. So anytime, I would my recommendation is anytime you want to pet a dog, you would obviously ask the owner, or in our case, the handler or the police officer, is your dog friendly? Can I pet him? And in our case, you get it absolutely. He might, if you don't like to be kissed, watch out. He might give you a kiss or two. But that's why they just make sure you ask the police officer first, whoever it may be, is your dog friendly? Can I pet them? And if they say no, doesn't mean they're bad dogs. It just means that they're not as friendly. We're fortunate enough to have friendly dogs. So I think that, from my experience anyway, in training with Philadelphian dogs throughout the region, the vast majority of them are extremely approachable and extremely friendly. So just make sure you ask first.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess my next question is a little difficult, but for instance, based on a situation, is there any time, can you clarify to tell us when you would release Bear or Rocky? Ever?
So our policy is pretty open. I can't really get into policy because no one will understand that. It's just if me and Jen can articulate a public safety risk, that's when we would send them for, you're talking like a criminal apprehension, right? Which is, in the last, this is the last thing we want. But at the same time, they are capable of that. And they are trained for that. There is not, one of the things about police work I think that people see is they want, one response for a certain incident. And this is how it should be handled every single time. There's so many dynamics, and it's a fluid situation, and things are moving around. So I can't sit here and say that in every incident, in this instance, every time I would release my dog. It all depends. I would have to evaluate it and make a quick decision. If I can articulate that I'm in fear for my safety, or, the public, there's a public safety risk for an apprehension, a crime is involved. There's a lot of factors that go into it, and it's just similar to the weapons that we have on our belt, the OC spray, which is the pepper spray, the baton. It's all a matter of that we have to match what that person does. So it all falls into our use of force continuum, they call it. So every circumstance and every incident will be a little different. But obviously, they are trained to do that, but we have to evaluate them on a case-by-case basis. As long as we can articulate that there's a public safety risk or that we're in fear for our safety, then yes, we could deploy them. But then, it all depends on the specific circumstance.
Okay. Obviously, the dogs are another tool, just like you said, like the pepper gas. But Officer Cocco, what type of gear do Rocky and Bear use, if any? I know sometimes I see in videos muzzles and things like that. Do they have any gear that they would use?
Bear and Rocky do not have muzzles, but Basically, the thing they use most are their leads or leashes, their tracking harnesses, any type of collar. They have flat collars which say police on them. Just you know, I guess identifying them as police dogs. The most important thing that they have are their toys. They are trained to work for reward, and that is that toy. So they just love their toys. So that is the most important gear they have. They do have bulletproof vests that were donated by the Delaware County Kennel Club, I believe.
Wow.
They were
Nice.
donated. But yeah, as for gear wise, pretty much it's just their leashes, leads, anything we use in the field is very simple.
That's
as
terrific.
it pertains for that.
And when you think in terms of tracking, the harness is specifically designed to not restrict any type of airflow, because obviously in a tracking scenario, they're using their nose. You want to be able to have them breathe without any type of restriction anywhere near their neck area, things like that. So the harness is actually created to promote, a lot of breathing, because that's what they would need for tracking.
Okay. And could you touch upon, obviously they spend a lot of time in the vehicle. Can you tell us how they're transported, or what they just get locked in there? What if it's hot? What if it's
Right, sure.
scenarios?
Sure. So we basically just use like a regular. I have a regular Ford Explorer. Obviously, the crate in the back is specifically designed for a dog. It's just a flat surface with a rubber mat. He has some water back there. That's all he needs. He's not fancy. And our cars are equipped with a heat alarm. So if the temperature gets above 85 degrees for, I believe, a minute, it will trigger an alarm. The lights in the siren will go off, the windows will roll down, and a cooling system, including a fan, will kick on to cool the car down automatically to try to prevent, we've all seen the tragedies with dogs and heat-related incidents in vehicles. Our vehicles are designed with equipment to prevent that. So it's a very important feature of the K9 vehicle for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And just so everyone knows, I know some police departments are actually doing it. They're actually putting on the side of the vehicles, if you see or hear the alarm for this vehicle going off, call 911, because there's sometimes that we may not be in the area. We may be in a house or something, and that alarm is going off and we don't know it. So they're actually putting on the side. So if you ever see like a police K9 vehicle with the lights and sirens going off and the windows possibly going down, call 911 and say, hey, I think the K9 vehicle heat alarm is going off. It's just
That's
little PSA
important, right.
involved. So.
That's fascinating. That's amazing. That's just fascinating. So what we can do is we're going to, at this point, stay tuned, because we are going to bring in Rocky and Bear, and then we're going to continue to talk a little bit because we have some more questions that we want to inform the community about. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay. Here we are with Rocky. He is the love. Look at him. He's so sweet and precious. He just wants tummy rubs the whole time. All right, so we'll get down to business. Officer Cocco, where is Rocky from?
Rocky is actually from Holland. He came over here in December 2013, when we started our training. Rocky is very vocal, as you can hear, and he definitely loves tummy rubs.
Well, I think the interesting part that we have to tell everybody is that Bear is outside the door. That's why he's reacting so much, because according to the officers, they are very close, they love each other, and they go crazy when they see each other, right?
Yes, and having them in here at the same time would be utter chaos, because they just want to play with each other. So we had to separate them because they just would want to play and not pay any attention to any of us.
So tell us, what do they do? Do they go home with you every day and night? Are they with you 24/7?
Basically, Rocky, other than when I leave him at home by himself, when I go out where I can't bring him, he's with me all the time. He comes to work with me. He lives with me. And yes, at home, he is just like a pet. He knows that he can just be a pet at home. And when he comes to work and does his job the way he should. And as you can see, he's very friendly. But when it's time to do his job, he can be your typical police dog.
Yeah, because I'm touching his mouth,
Yes.
touching his mouth, his lips, everything, and he's just letting me do whatever to him. It's amazing. So, for instance, when you go home with him, obviously you're going to get attached to him, living with him all these years. And some people want to know what happens when he's retired. Where does he go?
Okay, when Rocky retires, he will be coming and living with me. We actually, before we even decided that we were going to take this opportunity to become canine handlers, we made sure that after all this bonding, after all this partnership, and like I said, getting used to these guys, that they would come home to us. There are some police departments that do not offer this, but most police departments can retire your dog and they can come home with you.
Okay. And is there any specific age, or is it all different?
It depends on the dog, just like humans. Depends on when they can stop working. Rocky is 7. He'll be 8 in October. He has not slowed down, other than at home, just being a lazy dog. But at work-wise, he has not slowed down one bit, to be honest with you. So it just depends on the dog and their body, just like humans.
Okay, so if you are the only female, right, canine officer handler in Delaware County, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Okay, we hear you. Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
He wants to get out and play with Bear.
There's a little bit of a misconception that with getting so close to the dog, that you may not want to put him out there at risk if ever there was a real serious situation. But I think that goes into the attributes that you are, why you were picked for the canine officer. Is that pretty much the case?
Yes, like obviously I don't want anything happen to Rocky. He is my partner. Like I said, he lives with me, comes with me all the time. I don't know what I would do without him, but again, he is a tool for the police department. He is a police officer, so he has to do his job, and part of that job of being a police officer is risking your life. So could that happen? Yes, if the scenario comes up, absolutely. But I would not hesitate to put him in there so he could help other people and do what he needs to do, which is his job.
And that's why it's so important that the officers have good judgment, can handle everything under serious, that really says a lot to the attributes and personality as well that you've accomplished. All right, so shall we bring Bear in?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so now we have Bear here. Come here, Bear. You can see how beautiful he is, just like Rocky. Very big. I don't know if you can tell by the camera, but these dogs are huge and strong and muscular. So what we're going to do right now is Sergeant Lunger is going to show us some basic commands with the dog, which is just like what you would do with your dog.
Right, so, the foundation of our training was obedience. So before we did anything else, we could make sure we did do the simple stuff. And it's stuff, that people do with their dogs every day. Bear, come. And, sit, there, and down. Good boy. Come, heel. Sit. Good. And then he gets his toy. Good boy. So it's basically stuff like that. And obviously, you'd want to do this, every day. Like we do 15 minutes of this every day. So it's still to this day. He's been working for 6 years in all kinds of aspects of police work, and we still do simple sit, down, stay, heel every day. So that would be, people ask me all the time about it, canine training, and I am not a canine trainer. I just have a police dog. But obedience every day. That's where it's all built on. If you want your dog to do anything else, it's got another simple command. So.
Okay, and where is he from?
Bear is from Holland.
So they're both Bear and Rocky.
Yeah, both Bear and Rocky are both from Holland. He was bred from a working line. He was screened for police work to make sure that he could keep up with the rigors of police work and everything like that. And then we bought him from a dog broker in North Carolina. So. Bear is Dutch.
Okay, so they're both from Holland. And then what about, is there any from the United States?
Sure, yeah, it's just a matter of, we happened to come across this guy who Philadelphia police had been getting dogs from. So we were a little unfamiliar with the process. It was our first 2 police dogs we've ever had, like we talked about before. Yep. We leaned on them a lot. They've been doing it for years, and they recommended a gentleman, and he just happened to be from Holland. So a good dog is a good dog. That's the bottom line. It doesn't matter where it's from. Holland, United States, Czechoslovakia, Germany. A good dog is a good dog at the end of the day. It really doesn't matter where they're from.
And are you allowed to speak a little bit about the new dog that possibly is coming to the Radnor Township?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So we actually have two new police dogs coming to Radnor Township. One is from the Czech Republic, and like we spoke about, female Ursi. And we are also proud to say that we have a rescue dog that's going to be working with us that was adopted by one of our officers, and he was able to turn him into a police dog. It's a remarkable accomplishment by both the handler and the dog. So we're very proud of that we were able to rescue a dog and put it to, for work purposes, put it to good use. So that's great. It's got a great home, and it'll be working for us pretty soon.
Oh, that's really, really impressive, I think. Now, the dogs, it's interesting because I literally have put my hand in their mouths, on their teeth, everything. They seem so gentle to me. Can you talk a little bit about if somebody has a family at home, how they react with the family members, all that? Are they crated all the time? Are they pretty much a family dog?
Sure. So, Bear is crated, but the door is not closed, so we leave it open for him. So he goes in there. That's like his room. That's where he goes to relax. So he'll go in there on his own. And I have two daughters, 4 and 2. He's great with them. They can pull on his ears, ride him like a horse.
Really?
He loves them. What we did was, when my daughters were born, they say you bring something home from the hospital, a cap or a blanket, and let the dog smell it, leave it in the basement for a little while so they can kind of get used to the baby being around. I don't know if that helped, but Bear took to them right from the first day we brought them home. It's been a great experience to see the dog around the kids.
So it's just like any other dog, really,
Yeah.
because it's no different.
Yeah.
And I think people would assume, and probably a misconception, that they would maybe be dangerous because they are trained at some point.
Sure.
But that's amazing,
Yeah.
terrific.
Yeah.
Well, I think we need to give the dogs a break. They've worked hard here today. So thank you, Bear. And thank you, Sergeant Lunger.
Yeah.
And thank you to Officer Cocco as well. And if you see them on the street, please come up to them and say hello.